The management company refuses to give them their bank statements for their reserve accounts. They don't even know how much money they're making. I told them it was 0.15%, which is nothing.
This is Operational Clarity, where we sit down with experienced leaders from the HOA, Strata, and body corporate management industries from around the world to unpack what it really takes to build and run great operations. My name is Robert Hangu, and today we're joined by David Perdue from Salt Lake City, Utah. David is a process-oriented HOA executive who's trying to build a modern alternative to traditional HOA management. He publicly advocates for HOA reform and challenges misaligned incentives in the industry. Earlier in his career, he worked for the state of Utah, modernizing data processes before moving into community management. David consistently talks about proactive maintenance and board education. His focus lies on operational efficiency and using technology that improves day-to-day management. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Robert. Thanks for having me.
You've recently met with Utah state legislators and other HOA management executives to discuss HOA reform, and you also published an article about this. What is broken in HOA legislation today?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing that's broken in HOA legislation is that there's not much accountability for both management companies and boards who are negligent in their fiduciary duties to the association. Management companies are focused more on, not all management companies, obviously, but a lot of them are just focused more on profits rather than how they can help the associations.
Why do you think that this model has lasted for so long?
Well, I think the model's lasted for so long because there's a lot of, just like with other government entities, there's a lot of lobbying that's done. There's lots of money put into that, into attorneys to protect management companies and look out for their best interest. And they don't work the corruption that there is behind the scenes. Things are allowed to be legal that probably shouldn't be legal, and there's just not much transparency. And then as far as associations go, they don't have the money to fight like the lobbying industry does. They even just to sue a management company, most HOAs don't have the money to go through that, even if they know there's an issue.
For our listeners from overseas, from Australia, New Zealand, the UK, even Canada, could you explain a little bit what these misaligned incentives are and how they basically deteriorate the whole ecosystem around HOA and community management?
Yeah, so there's different incentives that management companies get. Some are legal in the US. Other ones are incentives that aren't legal, but they're still happening. One of the biggest legal ones is that banks that hold the deposits for the association management companies are allowed to pay the management company for those deposits. And so they're getting money in exchange for having as many deposits as they can in those accounts. And the greater amount that you have, the greater payout that you get. It started a long time ago where they just help like offset costs, like software costs and that sort of stuff. And then some of these really large association banks have moved it into more that it's just cash. You're getting cash for having the deposits. So that's one way. Another thing that I've never experienced, I've never been offered, but insurance brokers are giving kickbacks for going with their company and signing insurance policies, which is not legal. It's illegal to do for an insurance broker to pay a management company to sign those policies, but it does happen. And I think that's a big red flag right there, because you're not looking for the best policy for your association. You're just doing it for whoever's going to pay you for it.
Yeah. Around the operational side, you're making a bold statement there as well. You say that HOAs function better when incentives, communication, and operational systems are aligned around homeowners instead of around administrative convenience. Now, obviously, this is also a bit tied into your policy, but how is this statement received by the broader HOA management industry and also your public writing? How is it received by your peers and the industry as a whole?
Well, I haven't heard anything from the companies that I know that are really participating in this. I know they're probably not happy with me being vocal about it, and they may not express it outwardly, but when I did bring up HOAs being able to put their reserve money wherever they want to put it rather than in the management company's affiliated bank, there was someone in that room that when it was their turn to speak, they pushed back in a way. It wasn't super direct, but they did say, "Oh, we need to be able to require them to have the money in here because it costs us lots of money to do business with a bunch of different banks and have to scan checks and put statements into our system." And he didn't clarify it with the ombudsman's office or the legislators that were there. It's true because we do have banks that are integrated with our software, and there's only certain banks that work with our software. And that integration is pivotal for our operating accounts where there's, hundreds of thousands of transactions depending on the size of the community. And having that integration is a big thing. Otherwise, you have to do it all manually. But for the reserve account that just sits there and hardly has any transactions in it, it takes you a couple of minutes a month if you need to upload a bank statement or put the interest in that was earned that month, or if you cut a check from that account, reconciling that. And so he was basically trying to tell them, no, we have to require it for both. But, he wasn't being transparent in, that it costs us a bunch of money if we have to have the operating account with a bunch of different banks. And there's other operators I know that specifically someone who left that company that this guy owns, who left because of this reason, and they found out what was going on. And they're like, we don't want to be a part of this. They started their own company because they don't want to be involved in that kind of stuff.
Got it. Tell us a bit more about your business, the homeowner associations you manage, and some of the processes that set you apart from other management companies. You are very adamant about having solid processes, especially given your background. So I think our audience is interested to hear more about your operational details and how you actually run stuff day to day.
Yeah, so I built my company because of experiences that I had with my last company. It was a great company. It was a local company, and they got bought out by a multinational company that came in. And that's when I really started seeing how broken the system is. Found a bank that was giving reserve accounts that had high yield for associations, brought it and I was shut down immediately. Nope. We're not going to talk to them. And I didn't know why. I didn't understand that there was these kickbacks that were happening for all the deposits. And they also were just loading us up with so many properties that we couldn't even function or service our accounts. And so that was a combination of why I left. I was just like, this is ridiculous. We can't give the service that we used to give. It's not, the focus isn't on the association. It's on how much can we manage. So in starting my company, one of the biggest things for me is transparency, that the HOA has transparent financials. They can see every single invoice. They know what's going on. They know what we're making as a management company, because what's wrong with letting them know? If they know about it, then and they're fine with it, then they'll continue the contract. If they don't want to work with you, then they'll go somewhere else, right? I also experience a lot with HOAs that I managed that were just in shambles because they had been poorly managed by boards and management companies, and they had no solve that problem. So I will not just manage an association. Very direct with the board. This is what you need to do. Otherwise, you're going to end up like these older associations where you're having to do huge special assessments, get loans, do all the stuff because your properties are going to be condemned because they're falling apart. So in my contracts, I specifically say that the board's not doing their fiduciary duty to the best that they can, that want to plan for the future, that they want to do the right thing for their community. I'm very upfront about that. Like, hey, we're going to plan out your finances. We're going to plan for several years. We're going to use reserve studies. Rather than just having a reserve study, we're going to actually follow that with budgets and make sure that your dues are set appropriately so you don't end up like these other associations. And if you don't want to do that, that's fine. You can work with someone else. But we're here to fix.
How is this radical transparency received?
It's actually received very well. It's refreshing to the boards, like, oh, you're telling us stuff that we didn't know. I met with a board yesterday and they're having transparency issues with their association. And they don't get in their monthly financials. The management company refuses to give them their bank statements for their reserve accounts. So they don't even know how much money they're making. I know I'm familiar with the bank, so I told them it was 0.15%, which is nothing.
Hmm.
They told me that they've asked to invest their money in CDs. The management company just didn't respond to them. They asked multiple times, we want to earn more interest on our reserves. No response. So then they told the management company, we're going to just go put it in a local bank then, if you're not going to help us. And they said, oh, you can't do that because we have to add extra bank statements.
Can't they just change the management company and say, okay, we'll just work with somebody else who's more transparent? Or is there legislation around that?
No, they absolutely can. But it depends on their contract with the management company as well. This particular board that I was speaking with, that's what they're looking to do is switch management companies. But there are management companies that will do very long-term contracts to make sure they keep them in there. And legislation actually recently changed that if it's more than a year contract and it auto renews, that the provider, whether it be HOA or some other sort of sales contract, they have to give you a 90-day notice that it's renewing and show you the new contract, because these long-term contracts of like 3 to 5 years were just auto renewing without the boards knowing. And, you get board turnover. They may not know what the previous contract had in it when that date is coming up to give notice that they're moving on to a different company. Then they're locked into another long term. So that's a great legislative change that did happen that prevents, these HOAs from being stuck for a long period of time. But the 1-year contracts, there's nothing in there, the legislation. It can auto renew without notice. And then they're there for another year.
Let's shift gears a little bit to some operational topics. Your company, HOA Love, emphasizes team-based management and reducing management burnout. Which operational bottlenecks were you trying to eliminate?
Yeah, so when I was with my previous company, I noticed that there was a lot of manager turnover. And we would have new managers that they didn't fit in with HOAs, they didn't really like it, or there were people that were there for quite a while and they would leave because they were just so burned out from going to all these meetings and everything. And when that would happen, there's a big learning curve when you take over a new association. You have to learn so many things, and we would be, usually an existing manager would come in and take over these associations, and we'd be clueless as to what was going on because the previous manager either didn't make good records, or they had paper notes that no one was aware of, or there was all these issues. And so I was like, man, there's got to be a better way to do this. So, and even if someone just goes on vacation and they're gone for a week or two and you're covering for them, you don't know what's going on in that community. So I was like, I think a good way to solve this is to have a primary manager on the account and a backup manager. Then if one goes on vacation, the other person can handle it for a week or two. Or if the employee left, they could handle it until another employee was hired, and you get that person up to speed and hand it over.
I see. So you've got basically 2 people or 2 managers for each community. How does that scale?
Yeah, so I originally thought about this, and I talked with some other people who were with my former company who had moved on as well about what they thought about that. And they're like, that's a great idea because this is a huge gap, and then it hurts the board, it hurts the homeowners because they're having to work with a new person now and get them up to speed. And especially if there's projects as they're in the middle of. And I thought it was a great idea. And then I realized that with the way technology is now, that it's not needed. The software and everything that we were using at my old company was old software that was not advancing with technology. Now, with our current software, there's an AI agent that tracks everything that happens. The AI agent helps with emails, with homeowner questions, action items that are put in the portal, with invoices, with contracts, and it records every single thing that's being done. So you can just go in there and ask it, like, hey, what's going on with this? And it'll tell you exactly what the history was. So that team-based model really, if you had a different software that didn't do that, it would be a great thing. But I've realized that with the AI technology that's just come along, that it's not needed.
Mhm. How many years have you been running the backup manager model?
Yeah, so we're a new company. We've been in business a little over a year. I started out with that model for a little while, and I was talking with boards about it, and they were like, "Oh, that's a great idea!" Like, because there's times when our manager just goes like MIA when they're on vacation. We can't get a hold of them. We don't know who to talk to. And then our software company really came through with innovating the AI, and it didn't last too long. It was, probably 4 or 5 months. And then I saw like, oh, this is a way better idea.
Mhm, mhm. How was the transition from the to manager model to the technology backed model? What changes have you done internally, and what team trainings were required?
Transition super smooth. A lot of people are already using like ChatGPT and that stuff for, various things. It's been around for a while. So it wasn't something that was brand new that they've never worked with before, right? And so, but with the AI in our software, it's like very easy to use. There's not really a lot of training that's needed. Training the AI agent is a bigger thing, but we have an onboarding team that with the software company that helped us with that. So
Mhm,
it was very simple.
mhm, mhm. How do you train the AI agent?
Yeah, so the AI agent just it learns very quickly. So it follows your day-to-day stuff, and it'll, even with just invoices and how you code invoices, it'll track that. And so if you do something repetitively, like within 2 months or so, it has a process and knows it. And then we also have, like I said, there's a software team on the back end, and they can write stuff in there, and they work with us, and what our tone is, what policies we have, all that stuff, and they code it all into our AI agent. And then the they've done a lot of training on just HOA stuff, so it knows HOAs in and out and how they run and everything. So it can read governing documents and be very accurate with them. It can read budgets. It can read reserve settings. It's really cool.
Mhm. How long did it take for their software team to build all these training data for you? I mean, the HOA data and the reserve studies and everything.
2 months.
Mhm. And this is the
Very,
software
very
team.
quick.
I see. So they're basically the software team on the side of your vendor, and they are assigned to you. They're a dedicated team that's assigned to you, right?
Yes, yes. So they're an onboarding team, and they have so many management companies that they work with the onboard. And then past that 2 month onboarding window, you still have a main contact person that you can reach out to if you're having any issues or you want to change something, and they can.
Mhm. How often do you get back to them with issues? How often do issues arise?
Very rarely. They've put a lot of research into it, a lot of just programming before they even released it.
Yeah. Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Would you say that great property managers should spend less time managing properties and more time managing systems, given the new technology that's available?
That's a good question. I think as far as like just the community managers go, no. But as far as leadership goes, I think there's a lot of time that needs to be put in that, because it can greatly improve the operations of the company. And that technology, having that in place and having it be efficient, really gives the managers time to focus on what's important and really spend time with boards and the projects that they want done, and anything that's going on that's outside of just like general questions. That really, the general questions eat up a huge portion of your day, just responding to homeowners on things. And that leaves you with less time to really do what the board wants you to do, which is, helping get bids, helping with their governing documents and updating those, and it stretches a manager really thin. So I think the leadership definitely needs to spend a lot of time on that side of really developing those processes, and it will improve the performance of the managers themselves.
Hmm. Can you give us some metrics inside your company, how much time your managers spend on answering these repeat questions? As in, how much time do they eat out of their day versus the actual, let's say, value adding work to communicate with the board and all of that? Is it like a 50-50 split, or is it more 70-30?
Without the technology, about 75-25, and
Hmm.
75 of that is just helping homeowners. And with the technology, it's very minimal because that AI agent is working 24/7. Any emails, action items, any of that stuff that comes in, it already has a response for you in the morning. And you just look through it. Okay, this looks correct. Or you can give it feedback like, oh, you missed this. This is inaccurate. And if it's something that's a really big miss, you submit a different ticket and that goes to the back end software team. But within a click of a button, they just approve it and it automatically does it. And so it's minutes out of the day, maybe an hour at most.
That's a huge,
yes.
Yeah, that's a huge
Yes.
huge change. What's something that the AI cannot do?
That's a good question because it can do everything. It amazes me because you would think that it wouldn't have that human aspect of it, right? But it does. Like it'll answer like very kindly the stuff, like it's understanding of people. I think the biggest thing that the AI can't do is it can't make the decisions of, like on like maintenance stuff. It doesn't know, like, it can say that the reserve study says that you need to replace this at this point, and it just goes off of that. But we as humans, that's where we come in as humans and we evaluate and tell the board, hey, the reserve study says this, but it needs to be done sooner or it needs to be done later. And that's just where it can't function and know that because one, it doesn't have eyes on the property. And two, it doesn't have all the knowledge of what goes into these repairs, what's required, how long a roof really lasts in Utah, like with different weather conditions. It doesn't know all that kind of stuff. So that's where we come in as experts. And then even with legal stuff, it doesn't know that or insurance stuff. Like it can tell you what's in the policy, but it doesn't necessarily know what that means to a community.
So it has no judgment in that sense.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Got it. How often does it happen that you get to a bottleneck with the AI when you require the judgment and it doesn't have the judgment? And I imagine then you would need a human to intervene in the process, right? How often does that happen?
I wouldn't say it happens often, mostly because we don't rely on it for that. A lot of that stuff comes with us just meeting with the board, not with action items that come in.
I see. Do you have somebody in your company who looks at processes and thinks this is how we can automate it? As in, who decides what process might need an upgrade or what process might be automatable in that sense? Is it yourself? Do you have a
It's
team?
myself. Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's me. It's me. That may change down the road, but for right now, it's me.
Mm-hmm. And what's your process for that? When you see something that might be a bit outdated, how do you go about it? How do you collaborate with the team on that? Do you make the decision yourself, or do you ask the team as well? Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, so a lot of that is just because I manage communities, and I think that's where there's a big disconnect actually with a lot of management companies that have grown a lot is the leadership doesn't actually manage communities. So they don't know what's going on. They don't see it hands on, right? So I just see stuff day to day with how much our software does put into, R&D and just continually improving. They answer stuff before I even have the question a lot of times. There's sometimes I'll reach out and be like, hey, can you do this with it? And they'll be like, oh yeah, we're already working on that. It'll be out in a month or however long it is. It's so they're just so on top of it that it really isn't as necessary for me to look at that and be like, oh, this isn't working very well. We need a new system to do it.
What's the communication channel that is most used by the homeowners that you manage? Is it email? Is it phone? Is it maybe something else?
Yeah, so that's a great question because with the old software that I was using at my last company, the phones were ringing off the hook. Like people just calling all the time because they didn't have access to things. With our homeowner portal that we have, our phone calls are very minimal. Usually the phone calls are from people who don't understand the technology and they need help getting into it. They don't know how to set up their portal, that sort of thing, or they're having a hard time navigating it. But most of the stuff comes in either through the portal or email now, which is a huge thing because at my last company they had to have 3 to 4 people just answering phones to direct calls, and now we see the homeowners like the technology. They like to be able to go into their portal. They can look at their statement that maybe it didn't come in the mail, got lost in the mail. They can download their statement directly from the portal. They can make electronic payments. They can see all the meeting minutes in that portal. They don't have to call you and say, hey, send me the minutes from last month, or where are the governing documents? I don't know where to find this. It's all there and it's easy to access.
No, that's a game changer. Does your platform also answer the calls through an AI, or do you still have somebody on the team to actually answer the phones?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Our platform does have that capability. We do not have it yet. It's an optional thing that they have different packages that you can pay for. Our call volume right now isn't high enough for it to make sense for us to do it, but I have demoed the voice agent is what they call it. And it's amazing. Like it'll sit there. It sounds like a real person. You don't even know you're talking to an AI. You give them your name, your account number, address, whatever it asks for. It can tap directly into their account and tell them about their statement, why they're charged a late fee or why they're fined. And then if they ask governing doc questions, it'll go in there and say, oh, your governing docs say in this section that this is, what you have to follow. It's amazing. And all that. And I told them, I said, abuse it. Like some people are very rude and mean and angry when they call in, right? And the guy that was demoing it did, and it didn't get argumentative. It said, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that you're frustrated with that." Like, and it answered the question. Like, it was really cool. So at some point we will be using that, but right now we just answer the phones because there's not a huge volume yet. And then they also have a text option as well through that, where homeowners can text in and get responses.
What's a call volume where you would say now it makes sense to implement the voice agent?
I would say if we're getting probably like hundreds of calls a day, right now it's just so low. We maybe have 10 to 15 calls a day, which is amazing to me because like I said before, it was like phones ringing off the hook like all day long. Obviously that company had been in business a lot longer and had a lot more clients than I do right now. But I think when we start getting that volume, then we can't, more so that we just can't get to the calls and a lot of them are going to voicemail, then it's time to bring that on.
How many communities do you manage at the moment?
So right now, still small. Like I said, we're just started a year ago. We're growing or building. Right now we have 10 communities. I've met with multiple this week that are probably going to sign on as well. So there's a lot of different size management companies in the state. There's one that manages like 500. There's several others that have, a portfolio of several hundred accounts. HOAs are a huge thing here. Right now, about 90% of the new construction is an HOA. So we expect to see a very big growth.
Totally. That makes sense. So you would expect as you are growing, obviously the phone calls would also increase. And obviously,
yes,
at some point, you're planning to bring in even more automation.
Absolutely.
What's the biggest technology mistake that you've seen management companies make?
There's two. One is that they get comfortable and they don't want to go through the pain of changing software companies and go to something that's more modernized and really advancing. And so they just stick with that company and it really puts them behind when there's so many other companies in our area that are either already using one of the more advanced software companies, or they're switching to them. The other mistake that I see is management companies go with a platform that's more designed for rental properties. And it just doesn't have the capacity and the features that HOAs need. She just signed a couple of properties that are with Appfolio, which is great for rentals. It's a great software for rentals, but for the HOAs, it's terrible. So we're very dissatisfied with it. And I think that it causes them a lot, as a management company, a lot more work that they have to do when they're using software that doesn't match up.
Why do you think they use software that doesn't match up? Is it something around their technology understanding, or is it rather they come from a different sub-industry into HOA and they don't want to change their habits? What do you think it is?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is that in the state of Utah, in order to manage rental properties, you have to be a real estate brokerage. And a lot of these real estate brokerages have seen that, oh, there's opportunity, as they're already doing rentals. We can manage HOAs as well. And they're already using these softwares for rentals. And they're like, oh, well, we'll just use the same software rather than going out and investing in something that's specifically for HOAs. And that's where I see it the most, is where it's a real estate brokerage that started off with rentals and then they got into HOAs after.
Got it. So they think it's easy in a way, but they underestimate the complexity of the industry. What makes it so much more complex, in your opinion, than managing rentals?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing is dues collection. It's a lot different than rent, because a rental is typically, a lot of times it's a single unit, right? There's like apartment complexes and that sort of stuff, but they typically run on other stuff, and they're usually only managing apartment complexes. But if you have individual properties, it's easy to send a statement and track the payment that comes in just for that property address. When you're managing it for an entire HOA, you're collecting dues from hundreds of people that go into one account, and it's not separated by, oh, this account goes with this rental. So that's a really big thing. And then also the monthly financials, that most rental companies do not put out a monthly financial book for their rentals. The property owners that hire this company to manage their rentals, most of them don't even have any experience with financials. They just want to collect the money, right? But then you're having to put out these financials for these HOAs with all the invoices and all that stuff that an HOA is expecting, and the software just can't do it. And so it just comes out horribly. The communication's another thing. Communicating to an entire community. A lot of these platforms don't have that ability. You can send an email to an individual property owner, but you're not sending it to, hundreds, sometimes thousands of owners at once.
You'd say that these managers, they don't know that these more modern software companies exist. It makes sense to switch to a better software. Why don't they do it?
I think some of them don't know. It's just ignorance, right? You don't know what you don't know, because they think, oh, we already have software, so they don't need to go research and see, well, what else is out there. And then I think there's some companies that just don't want to switch because it takes effort. It takes, when you're switching from one software to another, you have to move all the data over. Even within an HOA management company that uses HOA software, if you're switching from one software to another, it's a big task, and it's very, very labor intensive to make sure everything goes over correctly, and all the homeowner accounts, all the bank accounts, all that stuff. It's a significant cost to do so. You need a team that's going to be in charge of migrating everything, along with the software company team that you're working with. And I think some just don't want to deal with it. They don't want to deal with the headache, and then others just, they're scared in a way. Like, what if something happens? What if I don't like the software? Because you switch from something that you're comfortable with, and then you got something else, and, oh, maybe I don't like this as much.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that in your case, the fact that you've started out fairly recently and had a blank slate in a way allowed you to shop around for the best software provider? So you didn't have this, let's say, this data load that you had to move around. Would you say that was a factor?
Absolutely. And when I started digging into it and doing demos with companies and seeing how different some of them were, I really wanted to make the right choice now rather than going with a company that was maybe cheaper and not as good with the expectation that, oh, maybe we'll switch over down the road. Like I saw that as being a barrier. We need to go with the right one now so we don't have to deal with this 5-10 years down the road and put all this time, money, and effort into switching to something that's better.
What would be the advice you would give smaller firms that are hesitate to innovate and to adopt technology?
Yeah, I think the advice that I would give them is that it may cause some more cost upfront or more effort or time upfront, but in the long run, you're going to be able to scale your business way faster and get more clients and be able to handle those clients by putting the investment into a better software.
So one last entrepreneurial advice for the 20-year-old community manager who is just starting out in the industry today.
That's a great question. I think the biggest advice is, obviously we've talked a lot about procedures and everything and having that in there, but really gaining people skills and being able to deal with different personalities. And I've studied a lot of books from different psychological mindsets and being able to steer people that are very, very stubborn, or they just can't see it in their way, to negotiate with them without being defensive or argumentative. And it takes a lot of skill to work with so many different personalities. And I think that's a lot of the people that don't make it in this industry, it's because they can't handle that. They can't handle dealing with a board member over here who's super nice and sweet, and this board member over here who's very authoritative, and they want to just tell you how to do your job and do everything. And they take stuff personally. You can't take it personally. You can't. It's hard not to sometimes, but those people skills are more important than anything. Because once you get the people skills down and you're able to work with a lot of different people, then the processes and all the intricacies of an HOA is the easy part.
That makes total sense. And that explains why you have this very calm energy about you. You've probably seen it all. And I'd assume that it helps a lot in dealing with all of these different characters, right? Nothing brings you out of your, let's say, your calm, your inner way. Yeah, so nothing, they cannot annoy you in a way. So this is a great advice.
Absolutely. I try to be as calm as possible. It doesn't mean that after the meeting, I don't go complain to my wife about this person that really annoyed me or that kind of thing. But having a level head is definitely required.
Absolutely. David, where can our audience get hold of you online, and where can they participate in the discussion if they want to?
Yeah, absolutely. So our website is hoalove.com. Pretty simple. You can reach us there. If someone wants to personally email me, ask me questions, anything, it's just david@hoalove.com. We're on LinkedIn. That's a great place. I'm actually going to be starting a newsletter on LinkedIn pretty soon about HOAs. I just started a group for HOA to reform for board members to come, and specifically board members in Utah, to tell me what they want to see, what I can take to the legislature to let them know, hey, this is what boards and homeowners would like to see change. But yeah, I'm happy to talk with anyone. Reach out to me. I'll take the time.
Amazing, David. Very deep conversation, very interesting insights. Thank you for being on the show, and I hope to speak soon.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. I really appreciate it.
See you.
See ya.